Welcome back, seedlings. We're in the same clothes and Andy's still wearing bacon.
I know, which is good news for
It's my
me.
new favorite shirt.
It means
I'm going to say, can you wear your bacon shirt tomorrow? And you'll be like, what are you talking about? I don't have a bacon shirt. Like,
know.
yeah, huh?
So I'm thinking about, I was thinking about wearing it to a medieval festival sometime, but they really like their meats at that place, so I'm guessing it's
It'll make a lot of people hungry.
Yeah, that idea. Though might be get a job being a spokesperson for one of the little
You can stand at the
fooderies
booth.
there.
Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
Hey, will you just stand outside this?
I'm going to be stuck on this forever and ever.
All right.
You're never going to wear it again.
Nope.
So we're still in Isaiah 6, which is funny because this is a super short chapter. A really short chapter. But I'm not going to reread it again. But God came to Isaiah. And there were some seraphim, which was super cool. But apparently that's just a normal thing in these days to see seraphim with 6 wings.
Yep.
Then Isaiah was like, oh, well, my mouth is really dirty and I need help with that. Because he's like, oh, I'm going to talk to God. I'm going to be with God and all these things.
Yep.
So the seraphim threw some hot coal at his face, which would really make me shut my mouth too.
Uh-huh.
So that works. Now his mouth is clean.
Yeah.
So we're going to start at verse 8.
All right.
Isaiah 6:8. And I'm only going to read like 2 verses because that's all we need.
Ooh.
Also, I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? Then said I, here am I, send me. Really, I only need 1 verse.
Yeah, go.
That's it.
Yep.
Because the rest is what God tells him. It's so funny. There's no pause. He's like, oh, and then he said, go and tell this people. Like,
It's almost like God said, I already know that. So, duh. That's why we're having this conversation.
I think this is like,
Way to catch up, Isaiah. Good. Here we go. Here's what
this
you're
is
going
my
to do.
tied. No, it's probably my favorite. So my other favorite verse in the Bible is when Moses says, no, God pick someone else. Right?
You have great verses.
I do, because they're so real. Like, everyone else is like, well, this is my life verse. It's about, like, I can do all things with Christ. I'm like, no, I want the one where he's like, go send someone else. Like,
Yeah.
that's my favorite verse. Because they're real. Like, I don't know. Like, the first time I ever read this,
Yep.
God's like, hello, anyone out there? Anyone want to go? Who can help me? And of all these ding-dongs, this one's like, hey, me, pick me. Who does that? You just saw some weird flying creature with 6 wings, and you're like, oh.
Yep.
You're the annoying one in the back of the room that the teacher never calls on because you always raise your hand. I have those in my class. We know someone who always raised their hand. It's like, I'm not going to talk to you. I'm not answering because you're like, me.
Pick me.
But it's like, man, Isaiah's got some cojones.
So,
Like, this is pretty, I love it. I'm like, that would be me. I would do that because I'm stupid. And then I'd be like, wait, what did I just sign up for?
yeah, well, that's the thing. I think how important is it that we talked last week about the process Isaiah went through, right? He recognized that he was lost, recognized that his lips were unclean. God fixed that problem.
He's like, oh, instantly, done. Okay, next.
But again, I mean, the seraphim, big deal. But tongs with a hot coal
Yeah, what is
coming
that?
at your lips,
Yeah.
and being put on your lips. There's no way that I want to sign up for that, right? Like
That wasn't optional.
yeah, no.
Then he signed up after that. Like,
But notice what it did was it took away his sin, right? I think that Isaiah is able to answer the way he does here, right? Because of that, right? Because God took away his sin, right? He's seeing things differently. He's feeling things. Like when sin gets in the way of us answering God appropriately, right? Sin, we look at our shortcomings, we look at our failings, we look at our flaws, we look at what people have said about us, we look at all these things. And when God says, hey, build me, a castle, we say, yeah, no, can't do it, disqualified, right?
see, time out, pause. Because, you see, this is why this is crazy. You just said when God says, build me a castle, we say, no. He had no idea what he wanted.
Nope, he just said, I need somebody to go do something.
He just said, hello, who's available? Who shall I send? Who will do this for us? Who will go for us?
Who wants to
Go
go
where,
on a
go
mission?
what, and do what?
Yeah.
Like, he didn't even say. Like, and he's like, yeah, me.
Right, but again, I think that's the deal. Like
That's where we need to be.
when God removes our sin, and when we're just in a good place, we're tight with God, and He says,
Yeah, give
"Hey,
it to me."
you want to go on a mission with me?" Right? We're
We're
like, "Yeah, let's go." Why? Because we're close to God. Like we're in tune with God. Right? We've seen that. Like, when are the times when we say no, like Moses, pick somebody else? What's Moses thinking the entire time? I'm not going back to Egypt. I'm not going back to Egypt. I know what's back there. I know what I've done. I killed somebody. I know I know my whole past, right? When we're tight with God, though, serving Him, pleasing Him, being about Him is what's important. I see that. You see that. We see that every day. Every day we see people who get on fire for God, and it's like, yep, send me. I want to go do it. Let's do it. And then they start collecting junk, and they're way more reluctant to go.
Yeah,
right?
or they start building the ark and it takes 100 years.
Yeah. But we have 50, 60, 70, 80-year-old people who have lived a whole life, and when you ask them, hey, you want to do this? And they're like, yeah, no. No, why? Because they know. They've had all this experience. You ask the 16, 17, 18-year-old, hey, you want to build an ark for God? Yeah, let's do it. Let's do it.
Because they don't know any better.
Because they don't know any better, right? They haven't had the disappointments. And we think about that. In 100 years that Noah built the ark, think at how many disappointments Noah probably endured. Right? How many times did things not go the way that he thought that they should go? How many times did people walk away from him? How many times? Like, how much of this happened? Right? We think of Isaiah. Isaiah is close with God because God has changed his life at this moment. Right? This Isaiah, we find throughout the rest of the book of Isaiah. Isaiah has some struggles.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Why? Because walking the thing that God has for us out is hard. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's super hard. It worked out for him, though.
It did work.
Well, I mean, it depends on how you look at it. People are like, yeah, it's funny because it does depend on how you look at it. Because people look at like how he died or something, and
sawed in half.
yeah, it's like, okay, so this guy got this call from God, said yes, could have said no.
Yeah.
This book could have been named, whatever, something else.
Could have been.
Like, and God would have, but like, he did all this stuff, right? Again, greatest prophet, most words, most everything, most all the things.
Uh-huh.
Whole Bible, beginning to end, all the prophecy, and most people would say, and God let him die that way.
Yeah.
Right? But it's like, okay, well, what about Jesus? You can't really be like, oh, well, Isaiah shouldn't have died that way. Because look at Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, look how Jesus died. So it's like, that's just for me, and I'm trying to wrap my head around all of that. But that's just like a really harsh, like, slap you in the face reality of like, it's like what happens. Like, you're gonna die.
Mm-hmm.
God doesn't shelter you from all of like that stuff.
Nope.
Like, he doesn't how many of these guys like fell asleep at night and just died in their sleep? Like they didn't die in their sleep soundly at 100 in their beds next to their beautiful wife. Like, they were like mutilated, and they were hung, and they were crucified and cut in half, and all these things. Like, it's almost like, why does God do that? Why does God do that? And there's not a good answer, I don't think. Like, I don't know.
Well, you look at it and you say, Jesus answered that call, right? You get this picture of
a
God crying out in heaven, who will go? Who can I send to save?
Yeah.
Right? And Jesus going, pick me,
yeah.
Right? And again, Jesus knew the outcome. He knew what he was going to have to do. Right? But again, there's evidence in there when Jesus says, I can only do what the Father tells me, that, again, even Jesus didn't necessarily know the time frame, didn't know everything that was going on. Like, that's a hard line because we think he knew everything. He knew every minute of every second of everything was going. Well, that can be really hard if you know everything and you can only do certain things,
Well, yeah.
right? So again, God didn't come down to Isaiah and say, hey, here's what's going to happen, Isaiah. At the end of this, you're going to get sawed in half, tradition says, by a wooden saw, right? Like, sign me up. Like, he didn't sign up for that. He signed up for the mission, to be on mission with God. So, we look at the basics of things and say the basic is, are you willing to answer the call and be on mission with God?
Right, no
That's
matter
what God wants. Are you willing to be on mission with God? That's all he wants to ask. He's not going to tell you all the other details all the time, because if he had told Isaiah or Jeremiah or Ezekiel or all that, they would have answered like Moses. Right? It's almost like God figured it out with Moses. Like, if I ask these people, they're going to tell me, go pick somebody else. I'm not going to ask him anymore.
Did you just say God had a learning curve?
I'm just going
to say...
What? It said, that's the problem with free will, is God still has to ask. Right? Like, that God tied himself into, right, this whole free will thing.
Process.
Right? Which is, hey, Isaiah, who will go? Like, that's why I love what you said. What's the next stuff? Well, boom, 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 right? It's like almost as God said, I knew you were going to say yes, so here's
now that we got the technicality out of the way.
But I still had to ask you, right?
It's true.
I
can't force them.
I love that. Like, lots of times we're in such a tight relationship with people. We know they're going to say yes to what we ask them. Sometimes we don't ask. We just assume, and that gets people in trouble, right? But we ask, and we've already got it. I love it when you're like, hey, will you come over here and help? And boom, you're like, they already have food planned, and they already have the project planned, and they already have everything, because they knew you were going to say yes. Right? God just, he wants to give us the opportunity to be on mission with him, and to voluntarily be on mission with him.
Yeah.
Love it.
No matter what.
Yepers.
And anytime you compare seedlings, you just think about what Jesus did. And if it's less than that, then shut up.
Wow.
I mean, it's just true. That's what I have to do.
Maybe we should come up with a new thing called Simple Seeds. And it's just like your little nugget. Like, here's how I summarize 12 minutes of talking.
If it's less than Jesus, just shut up.
Fantastic. Take that simple seed. Go with it.
It's true, though.
I'm not kidding.
If God's asking you to do more than what Jesus did, okay, then you could have a discussion with him. But really...
anything less than a cross, you probably should just shut up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. As he did that for you, so you should probably be willing to do that for him.
Wow.
Crunchy face.
I know. I kind of like this simple seed idea. Good deal.
All right, saplings. See you next week to see what Isaiah got called to do.
Ooh.
Dun, dun, dun.
That's beautiful.